The Quran, like the Old Testament, has a list of permitted and forbidden foods. The two lists are very similar. For Muslims, acceptable food is called halal and forbidden foods are called haram. Forbidden food includes the meat of pigs and of carnivores, or meat from strangled animals or with blood in it. In both Mecca and Medina, Muhammad lived in a multi-religious society alongside Jews, Christians and idol worshippers. The Muslims did not slaughter all their own food. Surah 5 verse 5 tells us that the food, including slaughtered animals, of the people of the scripture, that is, Jews and Christians, is lawful for Muslims. Muhammad himself ate meat from a sheep that had been prepared by a Jewish woman. Eating food slaughtered and prepared by non-Muslims was acceptable. Hunting dogs or birds of prey are not halal animals according to Islam, but even wild game killed by them was permissible to eat simply by saying Bismillah or in the name of Allah over it before eating. One day, some Muslims said to Muhammad, "People bring us meat and we do not know whether they have mentioned Allah's name or not on slaughtering the animal." He said, "Mention Allah's name on it and eat." He did not tell them to get a certificate from anyone. The Muslims themselves could make their food of unknown origin halal simply by reciting Bismillah over it. Every Muslim was responsible for their own food choices and how they dealt with their food. Even known haram or forbidden food could be eaten in certain circumstances according to the Quran. The modern idea of official halal certification is bid'ah, an innovation or invention by some Muslims who want to make money off food companies and gullible customers. Commercial certification was not required in Muhammad's time, and it's not required today.
Hi, I'm Kira Lee Smith, founder and director of Halal Choices. I love the freedom we have in this nation, freedom of speech, democracy, equality, and the freedom of religion. I love that in this nation, we're free to worship virtually anyone or anything we like. Jesus, Yahweh, Buddha, Krishna, Allah, a tree if you're that way inclined. I really value that we have freedom of speech. We are able, at the moment, to openly and candidly discuss religious ideologies and how they affect us. A number of years ago, I went to a seminar on Islam, and during the seminar, the speaker made reference to halal certification schemes. As a wife and mother who does the shopping, that resonated with me, and I thought, that is one thing that directly affects me and I could do something about it. I wanted a choice about what I spent my family's hard-earned dollars on. I came home and tried to find a list of halal certified products on the internet. What I discovered was astounding. After about 4 hours of searching and foot stomping, I realised there was no comprehensive list of halal certified products. There was a lot of discussions and comments about it everywhere, but no clear list. Over the coming days, I contacted some companies and even halal certifiers themselves to investigate a little further. In this presentation, I want to share with you some of the discoveries I've made along the way, including corruption, confusion, and outright deception. After 10 months of intensive research, including phoning companies, writing letters and emails, we compiled a shopping guide, which you can find on the website Halal Choices. You can also buy a pocket-sized shopping guide to take with you. We now attract over 15,000 unique visitors a month to the website. Most are consumers looking for information about halal certified products, as more often than not, it is not clearly marked on the label. Consumers tell us they want a choice when it comes to whether or not they want to fund and endorse an Islamic religious practice with their everyday grocery purchases. This is in direct contrast to the freedoms we enjoy in this country. Freedom of religion is a fundamental human right. You are welcome to practice the religion of your choosing, but it is not to be imposed upon others, and it is certainly un-Australian to ask others to fund it. When I buy my milk and cereal, bread, fish or any other grocery item, I'm happy to support the farmer and manufacturer, but I don't want to fund religious practices. I don't buy rosary beads for Catholics or incense for Buddhists, even though I'm happy for them to practice their religion, but at their own expense. The obvious question I'm always asked is, well, how much does it cost? And this is where I've encountered the greatest opposition. Nobody wants to disclose it. In fact, most companies must sign a non-disclosure form when it comes to the fees that they have paid. However, some companies have chosen to share that information with us. the companies that have not gone along the lines of halal certification but have received quotes as such. One small confectionery company contacted me to let me know that they'd had a quote for halal certification. The quote was for $1,148. They decided not to go with halal certification because they realised there was no demand and that Muslims could clearly read the labels of their products and discern for themselves that their products were in fact permissible. Another milk producer has also contacted me to let me know that their fees or their quote was $7,000. A number of other companies that don't want to be mentioned have also said that there's great inconsistencies in the fees or the quotes that they have received. We know for sure one chicken manufacturer has to pay over $40,000 a year for each processing plant that they own to be halal certified. There is no way that companies can absorb that cost when it comes to their own manufacturing costs. Of course, they have to pass that fee onto you, the consumer, increasing the price of those products at the point of sale. Systems of halal certification have been developed which guarantee to consumers that nothing in the food has any forbidden components for the followers of Islam. Halal certificates are issued for a fee by a certifying body. This is not a requirement of the Quran or Hadiths, but a modern day practice. It only began in the 1980s. Let me make it clear, it is a modern day invention. Obviously, we have a great deal of processed food now, so it began to give some Muslims peace of mind about the manufacturing process. It has quickly developed into a corrupt and very lucrative worldwide industry. I want to make it clear that Sharia law goes way beyond food and halal, but the point I want to make is that all of the halal certification organisations are operating under Sharia law and a desire for Sharia law to be accepted as a part of our mainstream society. In the Australian newspaper last year, Mr. Iqbal Patel of AFIC said, Australia has had legislation on halal since 1983, so we are already dealing with aspects of Sharia for the benefit of the country. Money that is paid out in certification fees for halal is used to fund, in part or whole, the push for Sharia law in Australia. The key thing we need to remember is that under Islam, there is no separation of religion and government. Under Islam, there is no freedom for the things we value, such as freedom of religion, freedom of speech, equality and democracy. As you are probably aware, there are three choices for Muslims when it comes to dealing with non-Muslims. There is violent jihad, there is conversion and there is dhimmitude. It is the third choice we are dealing with when it comes to halal certification. For more on understanding dhimmitude, you can see Mark Dury's book, The Third Choice. It is excellent. The Daily Mail reported in 2010 that the Grand Mufti of Bosnia-Herzegovina, Dr. Mustafa Serik, urged the Muslim Ummah to conquer the world through the halal movement, as halal means pure and hygiene, and the non-Muslim world has no hesitation to accept it. Well, that's incorrect. The non-Muslim world does have hesitation in accepting it, as the visitors to our website have expressed, and many other consumers, by boycotting certain products. Addressing a reception hosted by the Islamic Chamber of Commerce and Industry, held in his honour and other delegates of the Global Halal Congress, Dr. Serik said that the halal movement has the strength to lead Muslims to rule the global economy, as food and other services are the basic need of every human being. Elaborating on his point of view regarding potential of global halal markets, the Grand Mufti said that since food is the basic need of every human being, the Muslim Ummah should focus on developing a strong base of food production. The Muslim Brotherhood encourages the use of institutions and principles already in force in societies to destroy the West from within. This is an example that was reported on the Canadian website Point de Pascale. The Muslim Brotherhood must understand their work location in America as a kind of grand jihad aimed at eliminating, destroying Western civilization within, and sabotaging its miserable house so that Allah's religion is victorious over all other religions. It is the destiny of Muslims waging jihad that wherever he is until his last breath. The Muslim Brotherhood has a doctrine of war, disinformation and sedition. The current use of halal is a part of this strategy. In a text of December 2011, Yusuf Qaradawi encourages precisely use gradualism in the application of Sharia law. The goal of Islamists involved in halal is to control all stages of halal, ranging from the production, transportation and marketing of each product. Therefore, Mustafa Serik can reasonably speak of conquering the world through the halal movement. The World Halal Forum was held last year in Malaysia in April. Australia had 13 delegates, Nestlé was the second largest sponsor, and Fonterra was an event sponsor. In the post-event report, one speaker is quoted as saying, "The realm of halal certification has evolved from just meat and poultry to cover downstream processed goods such as dairy, confectionery, personal care and medicine. The realm has now extended beyond products into services. Logistics service providers are now clamouring to be halal certified as they realise their vital role in ensuring a halal supply chain. Laboratories are offering their services to support testing for products for halal compliance. I have even read about halal hubs in Malaysia where there are gated industrial communities and everything inside is halal certified, from the transport to the buildings to the products and even the finance." Muslim Village claimed in July it is a $2.9 trillion halal market, and that is growing 20% a year. $560 million of that is in halal cosmetics alone, and it is booming. Today, halal certification affects pharmaceuticals, finance, animal feeds, ingredients, personal care and health supplements. The concept of tayyib, or wholesome, pure, good halal, is growing. This concept requires that halal processes be adhered to at every level of production, including the feed that the livestock eats, the financing of the business, the logistics processes, and so on. This will have a huge impact on economies and methods of practice. In Australia, if this is adopted, it will affect primary producers, manufacturers, investors and retailers in ways we can only begin to comprehend. So for example, this would mean the grain that the cattle eat is halal certified, so is the trough it eats out of, the farm it lives on, the drenches and the medicines used, the vehicles it is transported in, the abattoir it's slaughtered in, the packaging it is packed in, the transport again, and finally the shop it is sold in. And the financing all the way would have to be Sharia compliant. This is really big. To be Sharia compliant means that the companies cannot use their money to invest in other companies like the pork industry, the alcohol industry, even our defence forces. Countries like Brunei, who have depended on oil for income, are now branching into halal certification because of the huge dollars to be made. It's up there with oil. The Chief Executive Deputy of Al Islami Foods, Hamid Badawi, stressed on the importance of creating a global standard for the halal industry as a step towards transforming it into a global economic power. From the website halalfocus.com.au in 2011, this quote comes, "For marketers who are keen to sow the seeds of brand loyalty at a young age, the Arab Spring ought to be a wake-up call that it's time to move beyond glib generalisations and get to know Muslims better." We see that there are approximately 780 million Muslims in the global population. This makes up about 43% of all people. 11% of those are Muslims under the age of 25. This is not going to go away. We can't ignore it and pretend, "She'll be right, mate." There are clear strategies and deliberate steps being taken right now to merge these industries in such a way that Islam won't need all-out violent jihad to dominate the world. It is being done by stealth, and you and I, in many cases, are funding it through our everyday grocery purchases. The list of halal certified products is outrageously long and includes products such as milk, bread, honey and nuts. The Islamic Coordinating Council of Victoria clearly states on its website that the following products are intrinsically halal. That is, they are naturally already permissible for Muslims to consume and they don't require any form of certification. The following products are definitely halal without a certificate: milk from cows, sheep, camels and goats, honey, fish, plants which are not intoxicant, fresh or naturally frozen vegetables, fresh or dried fruits, legumes and nuts like peanuts, cashew nuts, hazelnuts, walnuts, grains such as wheat, rice, rye, barley and oats. I emailed the link to this page to Capilano Honey after I discovered they were paying for halal certification. This was their response. Dear Kirali, while we appreciate that honey is considered halal under Islamic law, it is our customers' requirement to provide halal certification in order for us to conduct business with them. Money talks and rational thought is simply out the window because some Muslim organisation somewhere is threatening Capilano that they will lose business if a product that is already permissible doesn't have a certificate. That sounds like extortion to me. The fascinating thing is that there are many products on the list that do not need to be halal certified. They are already halal or permissible or lawful by nature. A peach in its own juice does not need a certificate to inform a Muslim it is lawful to eat. But someone, somewhere, has convinced SPC to go through this process and come out with a certificate. Lee Kum Kee has paid for certification on many of their sauces, including one for honey, garlic, spare ribs. Muslims don't even eat pork. What about hot cross buns for Easter? You really do have to ask the question, who is the halal certification for? In these last two instances, these products are not for Muslims, and yet companies are paying fees to an Islamic organisation for the sole purpose of certifying their products for the Muslim market. Paul Sheehan wrote an excellent article for the Sydney Morning Herald about Cadbury paying to halal certify their Easter chocolate range. It just doesn't make any sense. Other than to show this is a dhimmi tax, a jizya if you like, it is Islam exercising the third choice over our nation. One argument companies like to use to justify certification is that it opens up a huge export market. Can someone please explain then why nearly every fresh loaf of bread you buy in a supermarket or fast food chain outlet has paid for halal certification? That's right. I have 23 pages of halal certificates for breads from Aldi, Best Buy, Buttercup, Black & Gold, Coles, Drake, Foodland, Good Stuff, Golden Crumpets, IGA, No Frills, Savings, Abbott's Village Bakery, Baker's Life, Balfour's, Clear Wrap, Fisher's, Franklin's, Goldmax, Home Brand, Hot Baked, Independent Bread, Jackaroo, Maxi, Naked Bread, Restaurant Bread Range, Richie's, Smart Buy, Buzz Shed Bread, Sunbless, Texas Toast, Superbarn Bread, WA Country Bakers Brand, Woolworths, Boss Hog, Brody's, Burger King, Chicken Treat, Dinkum Dogs Hot Dog Rolls, High Top, Tip Top, Hog's Breath, Holden, Homestead, Hungry Jack's, KFC, O'Porter, Red Rooster and Wendy's. Parmalat also have a huge list of halal certified products, most of them being the white milk you buy in supermarkets every day. White milk does not need to be certified. The other thing is they don't mark their labels clearly to show that they have paid for this Islamic certification on their product. They displayed the certificates on their websites, but because of the negative feedback they received, they have now been removed, even though they're still paying for this halal certification. Thankfully, there are companies like A2 Milk who are somewhat educated and know that their milk is already permissible and will not pay an Islamic organisation a fee to endorse them. You have to understand, this is about a global push for Islamisation. A chicken supplier from Western Australia contacted me after he had lost over $120,000 over a 3-year period because he refused halal certification. This man ran his own business and he would go to Steggles, pick up the chickens and take them to takeaway shops. Steggles became halal certified and so did a number of the takeaway shops. This man was approached by halal certification agency and was told that he would now need to have his van halal certified. He would have to pay a fee, which was several $100s at the time, so that he could also be considered halal certified. You see, if a chicken is slaughtered halal and wants to be retail sold as halal, it also needs to be transported according to halal certified principles. He didn't want to pay it. Nothing had to change in his van or his transport methods. It was just a matter of handing over hundreds of dollars to say that his transport was halal certified. He paid it for a year or two and then decided, what a waste of money, I don't want to pay it anymore, so he stopped paying it. He was pressured by the imam to continue paying, but he said, no, I'm not going to pay this fee. Then what he realised was that one by one, the chicken retail outlets were beginning to boycott him. They said, we cannot buy your chickens unless you are halal certified. He realised that they had been pressured by the certification companies to say, don't buy your chickens from him. Over 3 years, he stood his ground and refused to be halal certified. As I said, he lost over $120,000 in business during those 3 years. In frustration, towards the end of his career, he decided he would go back to the imam and say, all right, I will pay the few $100s, get my van certified, even though I think it's a rort and it's ridiculous. The imam smiled and said, sure, we will halal certify you. However, the fees have gone up. You need to pay for the last 3 years that you were not halal certified, and I'm going to fine you. This poor man agreed. He was so at the end of his tether. But this is the sort of pressure that some businesses are facing when it comes to halal certification. A former employee of King Island Dairy told me a very interesting story. A number of years ago, when he was working there, King Island Dairy decided to pursue halal certification. They contacted a number of these agencies, and one in particular was very keen for the extra business. They went through a lot of the information over the telephone, including the fact that he would have to come to their processing plant, he would have to inspect it and oversee the manufacturing process to ensure that there were no blood, pork or alcohol products used in that process of manufacturing or producing their products. When they decided, yes, we would like to continue with this, we'll go further, the King Island Dairy representative explained, you will have to come down to King Island, and the Islamic certifier asked the question, where's King Island? And the representative said, well, we're in the middle of Bass Strait. I said, well, how do I get there? I said, well, by 4-seater plane, that's the only way you can get to King Island. The Islamic certifier responded and said, I don't do 4-seater planes, you just pay a little bit extra and I'll give you the certification, even though I'm not going to come and inspect the processing plants. It's another example of the rort and scam that I've uncovered in my research of halal certification schemes in this nation. Early on in my research, I spoke with a representative from the Australian Halal Authority. Mr. El-Mawali explained to me and was very adamant that many Muslims do not trust the halal certification symbol. The reason being there are many different certifiers in our country and around the world, and many of them disagree on points of Sharia law. This was confirmed for me when I visited lots of Islamic chat rooms where they were discussing, is this product halal or not? This has the symbol, but it has this product in it, maybe something like alcohol, so it really can't be permissible for us to consume. There was a lot of this sort of chatter on the internet. This was ultimately confirmed for me on national television when Mr. El-Mawali was interviewed about halal certification schemes, and he himself confessed it's not about Sharia law. In fact, it was only about him getting very, very rich and buying his wife's shoes. The most recent level of the ludicrous was exceeded when we found out that cat food had been halal certified. How can it be? But it is. Purina Fancy Feast cat food is now on the list. On the Islamic website Muslim Oasis, a commentator writes, on the lighter side of the use of the term halal, but equally unnecessary use, is the manufacture and sale of halal pet food. Given that animals are not governed by the ruling of halal and haram with respect to their actions or their food, you have to wonder how far the use of the term halal can go. Does my cat care if he eats meat not slaughtered in a halal manner? No, he doesn't, let me tell you. He only cares if it smells and tastes good, and if it doesn't, he will go catch his own. And although he is a clever kitty, I don't think when catching little mice, he stops to draw his claw, Zorro style, across their jugular vein whilst meowing, Bismillah. This Muslim writer goes on to say, Allah has seen fit to ensure that animals are in submission to him and are not required to use their free will in accordance with his laws, because technically they don't have any free will. Halal and haram do not apply. The Muslim writer then goes on to ask, is this what is supposed to be integration? No, it is a money-making scheme. And all that comes from an Islamic website. Recently, our national airline Qantas submitted to Islamic religious practices over and above Australian cultural values. It is heartbreaking to see big businesses compromise what our forefathers and current soldiers fight for. Freedom! Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, thought and lifestyle. Qantas submitted to the Sharia law practice called halal by removing pork and alcohol from their food items on the menu on flights to and from Dubai. It all comes under Sharia law. Qantas are now Sharia compliant on those flights. They've conformed to a religious ideology that is trying to dominate us and is oppositional to our way of life. On their Facebook page, Qantas tried to allay people's fears with the following statement. On flights to and from Hong Kong and China, our menus include regionally inspired dishes such as stir fries, and to Singapore we have noodle options. Yes, Qantas, these are options. Not every passenger is forced to eat noodles. There are choices. If, however, you fly to Dubai, you must conform to Islamic Sharia law regardless, and you have no choice. Others have tried to argue that the handlers in Dubai won't handle the pork scraps. That's rubbish. Don't pardon the pun. You can buy pork products in Dubai. Qantas have blatantly upheld Sharia law over and above Australian values and standards of choice, a fair go and freedom. Where will this end? As consumers, we have to understand the full impact of Sharia law. Airlines may have to start reconsidering their employment options and not be able to employ people because of their sexual preferences. They will have to reassess their dress codes because that may offend some passengers according to their religion. Where will the line be drawn? The Sydney Morning Herald reported that the Supreme Islamic Council of Halal Meat in Australia, Mr Khan of the Al Faisal College at the time, and the Australian Federation of Islamic Councils were careful in their interview not to make any public allegations against those in charge, but they have made claims that money from halal meat rights could end up in the hands of Islamic extremists. This, of course, has been proven a number of times. For example, it was reported in 2008 that the Holy Land Foundation was one of the biggest Islamic charities in the United States before its closure late in 2001, and said then that it focused on disaster relief and aid to Palestinian refugees. Prosecutors, however, said money was funneled to the militant group Hamas. Another website reports, when a French consumer buys halal food, part of the price paid goes as a fee to halal Islamic experts. Some of those experts are certified by the Union of Islamic Organisations in France, which the Simon Wiesenthal Centre reports has strong ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, a transnational political organisation that supports terrorism. CBN reported a few years ago when the French journalist and author Alexander Deval began investigating how the Muslim Brotherhood was attempting a mafia-style takeover of France's halal food industry, his life was threatened. Nearly 60% of halal food is controlled by organisations belonging to the Muslim Brotherhood, he explained. Just last year in Canada, the Islamic charity Irfan lost its charity status. The Point de Pascal researchers show on this graph how nearly $15 million was funneled to the terrorist group Hamas. Here we can see that public institutions in Canada, such as hospitals, prisons, schools and military bases, along with general wholesalers, were paying halal certification fees to slaughterhouses run by the Muslim Association of Canada. MAC was then giving money to the Islamic charity Irfan, who in turn funneled $14.6 million to Hamas, a terrorist organisation. If money from halal certification is being used to fund terrorism overseas, then it is reasonable we ask the question here in Australia, where does the money go? It is time our government led some sort of inquiry or investigation to answer this question. This is an issue for all Australians, and as stated by Muslims and non-Muslims alike, Sharia law is already creeping into our nation. It is our choice to determine how much further it will creep. Our greatest enemy in these things is not Islam. It is not halal certification. It's not the politicians or the multinational companies. Our greatest enemy is apathy. Apathy is the glove into which evil slips its hand. If we do nothing, we will be overtaken in this issue. If we hold on to the attitude, she'll be right, mate, we'll too soon discover that she will not be right, mate. If we think it is someone else's problem, we will soon discover that the implications could affect us all. If less than 2% of this nation can influence so many industry giants, what do you think 98% of us could do? You can buy a shopping guide which lets you know which companies have paid this Islamic religious fee from our website, www.halalchoices.com.au. What will surprise you most about this guide is the amount of companies who pay this certification fee but refuse to put the information on the labels. Major companies like Nestle, Sanitarium and Kellogg's are all paying for this Islamic religious practice, and yet they do not respect the consumer enough to clearly mark it on the label. As consumers, it is time to let the companies know that you want that information on the label so you can make a real choice at the point of sale. We have seen some companies change their mind regarding halal certification as a direct result of letters written by members of the public. Your voice does make a difference. You can write letters to your local politicians and express your concerns. With any letter you write, can I encourage you to be polite but uncompromising? There are men and women in government who want to hear from you about this issue. We do live in a free and tolerant society. Australia is a great nation, and I believe it is necessary to have this discussion. Don't be shouted down. You're not a racist or a bigot because you have concerns about fundamental Islam or halal certification. Talk, share and discuss this important issue with your family and friends. The Q Society hold meetings in most capital cities of Australia to have a reasonable and rational conversation about Islam and how it affects us all. Visit their website for more information and meeting details. Together we can make a difference and ensure that all Australians have a choice when it comes to halal certification.